I'm going to just show a piece of research that we did. Is this on here? Thank you very much. First of all, my congratulations to all of you in the room. As you all know by now, we're all African. Okay, it all started in Africa, guys. This is where we all came from. So, well done, congratulations. On the back of this, we sat back a while ago, we did a piece of research with Africa Investor, and the whole aim of this was to find out what the reputation of Africa was like and the impact of the reputation of Africa on the ability of people or the desire of investors to participate. And Africa as a whole, and we know it's not one country, we'll hear this a lot, actually scored really quite well. We came in as the third most desirable investment destination, if you like, and we actually scored the highest on the very attractive index. But of course, this had to be balanced against some of the negative reputational parts, if you like, of Africa. The positive side, it's a big continent, there's lots of economic opportunity, and the investors that we spoke to globally, and this was a global survey, came back with things like the natural resources that we've got, the growth potential, the huge economic growth opportunities that sit in Africa as a whole. Of course, the other side of this are the same collection, corruption, political instability. And we found that these were the main things that kept people away from wanting to activate their desire, perhaps, to participate in investing in Africa. Poor infrastructure. These are all common elements to many of the countries that we looked at throughout the continent. And this is probably the most meaningful graph of the whole lot. We asked potential investors as to what are the important things, what are the key reputational elements that they would consider before investing in Africa, and then asked and scored us as to how we actually score against this on the continent itself. And no surprises, again, things like regulation and stability were the most strongly required reputational aspects for investors coming into Africa, and these were the ones that we scored really badly. And then, of course, you can run these out by country, now keeping in mind that timing has a lot to do with this. We did the same survey back in 2008, where we found that Zimbabwe and other countries that at that stage were very prominent in the news came back with a massively negative reputation. We've seen it now that, of course, the top 5, no surprises. We have South Africa at the top end of that, followed by Egypt, and then Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria falling out behind that. So these are countries that people or investors say that they would, from a reputational point of view, be quite prepared to go and invest in. However, the big gap between the score, perhaps, of South Africa and the next one, Egypt, and going down sort of into scores of 30 is quite a substantial jump. All right, so the summary of this, of course, is that we understand the world wants to invest in Africa. It's the untapped continent. There is a great desire, there's great opportunity, but of course, along that, there's a huge amount of risk. And the risk that we have from an investor point of view in Africa is that people are scared. Africa itself, globally, if you like, has a tough time with its reputation. Within this, an important thing that we're seeing of late, of course, is a lot of countries getting involved in what is called country branding, which on the face of it is absolute nonsense. Because taking your spot on CNN and doing a huge amount of communication about a country's brand is somewhat thin if the actual infrastructure and the behavior underneath that is not in place. And in some analysis work we've done on millions and millions and millions of dollars being pumped into country advertising campaigns, it's borderline propaganda, where the money could be better spent addressing the actual issues within the country and then communicate those when they are in fact correct. So from a brand reputational point of view, your reputation is built on what you do, not what you say. And I think the time has come right now when we look at country branding and promoting Africa as an investment destination, it needs to be based on fact and not on spin, if you like. So take the country branding away from the advertising agencies, please. So we need to also build high-value brands in the private sector. And we've seen this in Africa. We have great examples like MTN, which is now in 21 countries across Africa and the Middle East. We've just recently done some valuation work on the brand to calculate the return on the investment in the World Cup. And magic to see that the investment that has gone into building this brand strategically and properly has paid back tremendous dividends for that particular company. And of course, it's a huge employee across the continent as well. And we'll see the same in Equity Bank. I think James is here sometime today. You know, a great little business, not the prettiest logo, but it's not about the logo. The business itself is performing and doing exactly what it's intended to do. First Bank and UBA are the great examples of brands in Africa that have the potential to grow quite quickly. I think the final thing is we also need to communicate better what we are doing right. And we saw this in the research very clearly, that although Africa is the third most attractive investment destination, we're really very, very bad at telling the world that we are effectively open for business. Something that I believe needs a chunk of work to position ourselves better going forward.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.